tragedy in the Midwest as massive storms hit throughout that region, especially in Illinois and other states, and people are now digging out trying to repair the damage after being hit by these terrible storms and tornadoes.
And the wind was deadly, killed at least 3 people, those storms did, and leveled entire neighborhoods. Charlene Israel has the story.
It's a fast-moving system, but it's leaving a lasting mark. Over the weekend, Illinois took the brunt of the storm.
It was gone within 3 or 4 minutes. And just, you can see what it's done here, just everything, demolished everything.
Tornadoes leveled homes, shredded trees, and downed power lines. These storm chasers witnessed some of the destruction.
Oh my God!
One man stood at his window reciting the Lord's Prayer as a twister barreled towards him.
Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
And this family says they're lucky to be alive. Ben Dubois and his wife left to go pick up their kids from his parents' house. They were gone only 15 minutes, but when they returned home, their house was flattened.
If I was inside this building during the storm, it'd be done.
In Chicago, 60,000 football fans evacuated the stands at Soldier Field. The Bears-Ravens game having to be put on hold as a dangerous storm surrounded the stadium. Parts of Indiana also took a direct hit. One tornado completely destroying the Starbucks. According to the National Weather Service's website, a total of 65 tornadoes were reported. Charlene Israel, CBN News.
It's awful. You know, you see that at a distance, you say, oh, well, a tornado, but if you're there and all your possessions are gone and destroyed, well, the Philippines is also trying to recover from its massive disaster. Think of a storm so big that if it went from Bangor, Maine, all the way down to the tip of Florida, that would be the size of that massive storm. We've got some fascinating footage on this one, by the way, a drone. You can see that shortly. John Jessup has that story. John?
Pat, the distribution of water, food, and medicine to typhoon survivors in the Philippines is picking up speed. CBN's disaster relief teams are working throughout the affected areas. George Thomas is on the ground and has that story from the Philippines.
Okay, let's get those repacked and let's move it to the other side so that we can load them onto the truck.
CBN's disaster relief warehouse in Manila is in overdrive mode.
Actually, we've been in this mode the past 5 months. We've had typhoons, we had the earthquake, we had the war in the south. Now, this devastating typhoon.
Dr. Kim Pascual oversees the operation. She says Typhoon Haiyan is by far the biggest disaster they've had to deal with.
The scale of this is so big.
The destruction is wide, spread across 6 Philippine islands, and is presenting huge logistical challenges for aid distribution.
The problem is we're dealing with small islands that doesn't have transportation from the very beginning.
But with help from local partners, supplies are getting to the hardest hit areas by plane and boat. One of those cities is Tacloban. A 17-foot storm surge swept away the port city, destroying a majority of the homes and businesses. On a recent afternoon, CBN disaster relief teams set up an emergency mobile clinic near Marites Bacho's house.
My family had to hold on to trees to survive.
Nothing is left of her neighborhood. She's now living in a makeshift structure. And like so many of the survivors here, Bacho and her 2 children were treated for upper respiratory problems.
These medicines will make us feel better.
The official death toll from the typhoon stands at nearly 4,000, but officials say it could rise much higher. Some 11 million Filipinos have been affected, many displaced or left homeless. Long-term, the mental health of survivors is also a concern. Government officials in one city asked CBN Disaster Relief to provide counseling for typhoon victims. Tacloban was the capital city for 6 provinces here in the Visayas. Today, the unimaginable task of rebuilding a mess that looks like this.
We can be overwhelmed by what we see from the news. I myself am overwhelmed. But what we're thinking is zeroing into a village, invest in this village so that it can make a difference, even in 1, 2, or 3 villages, that we can transform and we can really say there is hope even in the midst of disaster.
George Thomas, CBN News, Tacloban, Philippines.
Pat, CBN Disaster Relief ministering hope and healing in their time of need.
Well, we've got some technology that will purify water, make chlorine, which can be used to purify thousands of gallons of drinking water, and that's what they've been desperately needing. But, you know, those photographs were taken by a drone. I flew in a helicopter over the Katrina area and up into the Gulf area in Mississippi, and you just can't believe the devastation when you see it from the air.
Yeah, you don't even know where do you begin.
Well, it's like you bulldoze the whole thing and start building all over again. But it's like somebody said, all vestiges of civilization are now gone, and those people suffer. But listen, we're there to help them. Dr. Kim, for example, has got her medical team going. Tremendous amount of water purification. We've got huge amounts of food supplies that we're putting in. Of course, we've been there in the Philippines for so many years, and there are many islands. So I said the other day that we might not have been the first in Tacloban, but we were the first someplace else. So, you know, there are various islands that we're trying to help. But if you want to help, and I know your heart's touched by this, the number to call is on your screen, 1-800-759-0700, and it's CBN Disaster Relief Fund. There it is on your screen. At Christmas time, let's remember the goodness of God to us, and then let's reach out to those who are less fortunate, and we want to do that, and thank the Lord we're there with a major presence in the Philippines and have been so for 3 decades more.
Well, that's one of our strongest offices, so
indeed.
having feet on the ground helps.
Absolutely. John?
Pat, Israel's Mossad intelligence agency is reportedly working with officials in Saudi Arabia on possible plans for an attack on Iran's nuclear program. A diplomatic source tells the London Times the Saudis are against a possible deal with Iran now being negotiated by the United States and other international powers. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the deal won't stop Iran's nuclear program. The source also tells the Times if an agreement is reached, quote, the Saudis are furious and are willing to give Israel all the help it needs. Netanyahu says Israel and leading Arab states agree Iran should not have nuclear weapons, and he says the world should listen to their concerns. Pat?
Well, he also said, we live there. We live there, but it's amazing, the Saudis and the Israelis coming together. I thought that would happen. I thought the Saudis would give basing rights to the Israelis so they can, they don't have to have fuel. The planes won't have the range that they need to reach Iran, but by being able to refuel in Saudi Arabia, they can. And the Saudis realize that if a rogue state of their enemy Shias gets loose with atomic bombs, it's going to be chaotic for every single inhabitant of the Middle East. So they're wise, and our leaders are not wise. It's a shame. John?
Pat, the problems with Obamacare have become a battle for President Obama to regain the public's trust after his credibility ratings plunged as millions of people have lost their insurance because of Obamacare, despite his repeated promises that if people like their health care plan, they could keep it.
I think he probably figured that he had to say this in order to get it passed. So there's no question but that he lied, and that we're all paying the price for it now. And you see real turmoil, frankly, inside the Democratic Party, because now even Democrats are having to admit what the president said was fundamentally untrue, and that this has been a train wreck.
Congress is looking at bills to try to fix some of the problems of Obamacare, but a Wall Street Journal editorial says, quote, the larger political reality is that Democrats own Obamacare and its woes, no matter how they vote, and Americans know it. Pat, just last week before lawmakers left Washington for the weekend, 39 Democrats helped Republicans pass the Keep Your Health Plan Act of 2013. So Democrats are definitely reading the tea leaves here.
You know, John, I know the Republicans aren't going to take my advice on it, but if I were they, I would keep my hands off the whole thing, not try to fix it, because these little fixes won't do any good, and they're just Band-Aids. The whole law is flawed. The whole premise is flawed. The amount of money that it's going to cost Woodward, you know, the Woodward and Bernstein Woodward, who's a very savvy guy, says when this thing hits the budget, it's going to be alarming. They just totally missed it. Rahm Emanuel's brother is some Ivy League academic. What's his first name? I forget. Ezekiel, but in any event, Emanuel. But these Ivy League theorists drafted this thing, and it has no bearing to real-world reality. It's just awful. And the whole thing, they need to scrap it. Well, this is what the Republicans are trying to do with that budget impasse they had a few months ago, and they got egg all over their faces, and everybody laughed at them. But it switched in a hurry, and the American people won't like this. The labor unions won't like it. All the way down the line, people are going to be hurt. This isn't just Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky, a little sexual liaison between two people. This is a disaster to millions and millions and millions of Americans. And it's going to hurt people. Some will actually die because they don't have the proper health care. It is an absolute disaster. It brought upon us by the left. And as Nancy Pelosi said again, we've got to pass it to understand what's in it. They did not know what's there, and they still don't know what's there. 20,000 pages of regulation.
The shocking part of it all to me is they have access to the best economic minds in the country, people who this is their life study. How did they so miss the mark on this?
The best minds are the most dangerous because they're not grounded in reality. You know, when I went to Yale Law School, there were some little pointy-headed types there who were, they had no, I mean, they did not ground themselves in reality. All they could do was think of theory and what they read out of books. That's all they thought about. And what happens on the ground to real people is totally different.
Absolutely.
It's totally different. And these theoreticians are dangerous. Who? Get me off my soapbox.
Okay.
Florida Senator Marco Rubio says America's morality is at risk. Rubio made the comments during a fundraising dinner for the conservative Florida Family Policy Council. He told the group Washington should not be concerned whether issues about moral values should be debated, rather which issues to debate. Thousands of people are viewing a newly launched CBN website in Chinese. 7G.TV currently has 251 online videos, and each week 5 new videos are added, some of which feature testimonies. In only 6 months, the videos have been viewed more than 1 million times. Social media also allows viewers to send in their own videos, sharing how much they've been touched by 7G.TV. You can find out more about what CBN is doing around the world by logging on to cbn.com/international.